Well, welcome everyone to Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game. I'm your host, Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money color commentator. On today's show, determining financial product costs, part 2 in our series on retiring right with media personality and financial consultant Alex Joyce. Welcome to our next segment here, Alex.
Thanks, Steve.
I have to say, Alex, we're talking about costs. There's a big debate about this of what should be disclosed and what should not be disclosed, but
Sure.
I've noticed that the millennial planners are into full disclosure. We're telling it like it is. Caveats. We didn't do that as boomers, right? We just told them what was legally required. Now, mutual funds. I have mutual funds. I have ETFs, right? I actually know what the costs are now, and are they really worth it? Because we talked in the last segment, here's the beta risk on this fund. Oh my gosh, here's the cost.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about, in the general sense, kind of give us an introduction into mutual fund issues, that there's costs involved here.
There are costs involved, and I think that everybody should know it. And you mentioned kind of in terms of the millennial way, in terms of the way we view it, it's a little bit more difficult, right? Because we've got a variety of funds where a lot of baby boomer generation didn't have ETFs, right? Where they didn't have a way to kind of get into commodities and get into different segments of the industry, if you will, where we do now. We didn't have, the vanguards where you can just get into an index fund at a very inexpensive way. But so I think that when somebody chooses an advisor, chooses a planner, right? I think one of the first things they really should disclose, and we do really well in our firm, is what they're paying for. Why are they paying for it? Why are they Why is this advisor charging me a certain percentage of assets under management when turning the channel where I never really did that in my 401k? Now I've got all this mail coming in my home, right, at age 65, where people think I need an advisor, and why? So I think that the thing most people should truly consider is past performance. Why and how? How is this individual, or how is the firm managing the assets? What does the consistency look like? And why would this individual charge me an average of 1%? Right? And I think that the reason why is to beat the benchmark, in my true opinion.
So do you think it's true that if we thought, I mean, Warren Buffett's kind of into this. He says, hey, listen, if you took the S&P 500 index, and if you can't consistently beat that, why are we even charging a fee?
That's
right?
true. That's true. That's true. I agree with that.
But there's some people that say, hey, listen, I want to be able, if I can do better than an index. There were funds out there in the between 2009 and 2015, early 2015, that were knocking it out of the park, 25, 30 points. So now when we're looking at this from a cost point of view, you just brought up one, the registered investment advisor fund. He has to disclose that through his ADV.
Sure he does.
ADV is just a basic format that we have to file with the SEC. So done. But now every single prospectus will outline the actual expense load to the fund. Now, I was kind of shocked at this, and I wanted your response.
Sure.
The average cost of an expense load was 80 basis points. All right, so it's 80% of 1%.
Right.
So that would mean that I'm paying a point with my IRA, and I'm paying 80 basis points with this. So I'm at $1.80.
It's true.
In your opinion, is that a good price tag? Am I getting what I want, or is it a value proposition issue?
It can be a value proposition issue. I think that it's very, very commonly overlooked, Steve. I think that you get into the argument of different class of shares, whether it's we kind of get into the weeds a little bit in terms of the 12B-1 fees, in terms of what is it in terms of a no load, right? What are we paying for in terms of back end loads? What is the actual management fee? So I guess what people need to understand, Steve, is there's a lot of fees associated with mutual funds. There's a lot of other fees that most people aren't aware of. With overall mutual funds or ETFs or any type of fund, if you will, if someone's managing it. You just brought up a big one. 12B trailers are in a form or a document by the mutual fund company called the Statement of Additional Information. So it's not only the 12B trailers are in there, it's like every marketing charge. There's a lot of expense. The appendix, right?
I know. I was just saying, and it's not, by the way, it's not required by the SEC.
Right.
So a lot of clients, when they say, well, Steve, how come I didn't tell them? Well, it's really not required. But every person that hears this show today, you can request it. It's called the Statement of Additional Information on your mutual fund ETF. You can request that. And it'll come there. And I was in shock. Forbes put out an article that said the average inside cost for statement of different was 1.44 a year.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That is a lot.
So, I'm just saying, do we know what we're getting? We talked to you in the first segment, hey, this is my risk. Do I really know what I'm risking? Oh, do I really know what I'm paying for now?
Right.
Or just add another thing to the equation that you look at all the time.
And it really comes into effect, and it really hits people when the market's down, because that's when they really start to look at their funds with a fine-tooth comb, right? If the market's down 5 and I'm paying 2, right? Here I am at 7% down. Why?
Right.
And so they come in, and we have to disclose those things once again. And remember, Mr. and Mrs. Client, right? Here's the benchmark. You're not as bad as it could be, but the fact is, this is what you're paying for. So you mean to tell me that you're actually charging me to lose money? Well, it's the value proposition, right? It's making sure people are aware of what they're paying for in terms of a full service.
Now, interesting, I want to shift a little gear for the second half of the segment now.
Sure.
I'm always asked, because I talk about it a lot, people say, Steve, what's the total expense load inside a deferred annuity?
Sure.
So, like I said, mentioned in the first segment, right now we're at 4% as we just crossed over the 4% barrier. If you went to a bank and you bought a CD for 3% for 5 years or whatever, I don't even think they're there yet. But if you did, they've already incorporated the cost of that. So they're giving you a net number. That is the spread. So if it's 2.5% for 5 or 3% for 5, it's already been priced. The same thing over on the annuity side. If they're saying it's 4% lock for 5 years, there is no other issues here. So those costs those are spread, by the way, spread products. Now, I know that you have conservative clients.
We do.
And here you are, a millennial, and you're servicing the bulk of your clients are boomers, right?
Yeah.
And they're so conservative. So people are looking not only for the rate of return, but they like the idea that there's no expense cost.
They love that. We like deferred annuities, right? Multi-year guaranteed annuities versus CDs. We like the deferral aspect, especially no cost. But I think that people are still more likely, or I shouldn't say more likely, but people are still used to kind of getting that fixed rate of return from a bank, where I think their mind frame isn't quite, at least in our firm, where we talk about the fixed, or we talked about the deferred annuity at 4% as a multi-year guaranteed rate, backed by a highly reputable AAA rated insurance company. We wish that more people would really truly consider that. We love it. We think it's a great value where you're ahead of inflation. You're taking very, very little risk, if you will. It's to me, it's a no-brainer. I love it. Yeah,
and keep in mind, everyone, when you're looking at deferral, there's some economic leverage to not paying taxes. If I'm over at a CD, I have to pay taxes whether I need the money or not.
Every year.
Every year. I get to defer that depending upon the period and the duration of the annuity. I was quoting 5 year. For 5 years, it would defer.
Right.
And if I wanted to keep going and go again, I would defer. So there's some power and economic leverage in just the issue of not having to pay tax.
Sure. I think they call that triple compounding,
I
right?
love that.
Money on your money on your interest, and the money that you would have paid in taxes.
I don't want to pay taxes. So I'm all over that, right? Now, interesting. That we were just talking about fixed. Now, index now. A lot of index annuities are hot right now. I love the hedge position. You don't lose below. 0 is the lowest you can go. You don't get negative. Yeah. You might be paying for an income rider depending upon the carrier and so forth. Okay, but other than that issue, that's a no. Now, in the period between 2009 and 2015, it was unreal. Sure. I mean, fixed index annuities are hot.
Yeah.
But when people most people buy fixed index annuities to ultimately get income from it.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about comparing fixed index annuity income to single premium immediate income to deferred income, because those are all different forms of getting lifetime income. Yeah.
I think they've come a long way, right? I mean, I've been doing this almost a decade, and the indexes in the fixed indexed annuities in that area, if you will, has grown, right? We can use indexes on various indexes. We can use it on the PIMCO. We can use it in the Merrill Lynch index. We can just go and just have a plethora of things that we can use as a benchmark for performance, 2-year point-to-points. I don't want to get into the weeds, but the fact is, when you have something that, as you mentioned, 0 risk when the market goes down, if you would, where you have a floor, as they call it, of 0, where if the market were to go down, you can't go below that floor, so there's no negative performance in a down market, but you have the ability to achieve greater returns when the market is up. Well, that's a win-win. But then, as you said, it's also got a piece in there where you can have an income rider, where you can have guaranteed lifetime income that you're pulling out of there. So basically what it does is it provides income, gives a hedge against inflation, gives the ability to put back what you've taken out. If you've taken out 5% and the market did 5%, you have the ability, if you would, long term, to put that money back inside of your portfolio and have a guaranteed lifetime income stream you can't outlive. So we do use those types of vehicles in our firm.
Well, just remember, we're talking about, again, financial cost of items that we buy through financial products. And I like to know what those numbers are.
Sure.
And so when we're talking about annuities, I need to disclose if I'm paying for an income rider. I need to talk about that.
Sure.
But if I'm not, and I just want to say, hey, look, it's a spread product. It costs me nothing. Listen, don't forget to watch our next segment on income and expense planning in retirement, part 3 in our series on retiring right. And keep in mind, before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always check with your tax consultant, legal counsel, or your financial advisor. You've been watching Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game.